Welcome everyone to another episode. It's your host here, Annalena, and today you get to enjoy another wonderful conversation that I had with an amazing guest. And I will introduce her now. I will read her bio, and then you can dive right into our conversation. So, best-selling author, mentor, land steward, and philanthropist HeatherAsh Amara has spent the last 3 decades weaving together earth-based wisdom, mindfulness, and practical strategies for creative, courageous, and compassionate individuals and community change. She's the author of 9 books, including the best-selling Warrior Goddess training series and also the 7 Secrets of Happy and Healthy Relationships with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. As a master firework instructor and former president of the Global Firework Association, the irony is not lost on HeatherAsh that when she found herself right on the front lines of the destruction of climate change, it actually came in the form of a fire. On April 6, 2022, her life was dramatically altered when what was supposed to be a controlled burn by the US Forest Service turned into a raging wildfire that decimated 341,000 acres and 9,000 buildings, including her own ranch. As she sat with her grief and sang apologies to the trees, she realized it was past time to take action in the ways she could by utilizing her voice and global reach for generating positive, impactful change in her community and around the world. So she began at home with the people around her who had also lost their homes and livelihood by raising funds through her extensive network and donating supplies to those in need. Thus marked the birth of something new. The Center for Creative Intent, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that she founded to offer space and education for community leaders to retreat, learn, and grow their capacity, both for weathering the oncoming storms and leading their communities through the transitions and contradictions we all face. And today, HeatherAsh dedicates her time to having the hard conversations surrounding the most critical topics of stewardship, anti-racism, and of course, climate change. Her writing can be found on her Substack, Out of Fire, and when she's at home, HeatherAsh plants her feet in New Mexico. But as a lifelong nomad, she spends most of her time traveling, teaching, and writing in cafes around the world. So it was really important for me to read her bio because I really feel it's so important to share with you a little bit about her life. And I really find it also impressive and also the challenges she has gone through and how this has influenced the wonderful work that she's doing in the world. And I also have to say that many, many years ago, when I started my self-development journey, I also listened to one of her books, the Warrior Goddess Training. So I'm really honored to have her as a guest on my show. And also, what I learned to my delight, you will hear this more during the episode, that she co-authored with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., who is the son of his father who wrote the Four Agreements book. I think this is also a book that many, many of us know, and she knows both of them really well. So without further ado, enjoy the episode, and she will share more about all of this in the conversation. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone. I'm very delighted to have another special guest with me here today. Her name is HeatherAsh Amara, and many of you may know her already from some of her wonderful books. And I'm just so happy that you're here with me today. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Annalena. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, so you have been doing this work, I think, for many, many years. And I would like to start with, some of the books that you have written and what has really inspired that process for you. So the Warrior Goddess, for example, is something that I read many, many years ago, and I think I listened also to it on the audiobook. And you also co-authored the 7 Secrets of Happy and Healthy Relationships with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., who is the son of his father, who most of us know from the Four Agreements. So these are some incredible books out there. And I myself, just to share with you, I want to write books. I haven't gotten there yet. So this is huge inspiration for me, for my listeners as well. Like, how did you get started and how was the process? I would love to hear.
Mm, yeah, I always knew I wanted to write a book. So when I was 7 years old, I started my first book and I was very passionate and inspired. And I got a page in and I realized, oh, I don't think I have enough life experience to write a book yet. So it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I wrote my first book. And I'd been a journalist in college and I'd always written articles. And it was really a labor of passion to sit down and write the first book. And it came out of being inspired by my many teachers. I studied with Vicky Noble, Cardon Falling Star, and then with Don Miguel Ruiz, who I met in 1992, before there was the Four Agreements book. So I was really blessed to work with him with a small group of people over the years, and get to watch the Four Agreements come into fruition. And then I also worked at the publishing company and was Miguel's publicist for many years. So I had a very interesting behind the scenes, getting to watch a book become a bestseller and be the publicist for Miguel's books, Mastery of Love, and his books after that. And so when I sat down to write my first book, it was because I saw in myself and in my students, we all really wanted to make big changes in our life. And I would watch us make these huge shifts, step into new possibilities, and then often backslide and go back to old patterns and habits. So I got really curious, what's happening? And so that was the first book, was really an exploration of how do we create change that's sustainable? And that first book was called The Four Elements of Change, and it was self-published.
No.
And I was self-published for many, many years. And for new authors or people that want to step into teaching or writing or sharing their gifts, I always say, just start, baby steps. It's fine to not know exactly what you're doing and to be willing to make mistakes and learn as you go along. And I self-published for many years. I think I've self-published 4 books before I traditionally published. And I've written 9 books now that have been published by different publicists, publishers. So I'm really blessed in that way.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's definitely inspiring. And of course, yeah, we gotta get started. And you know what's really fascinating? I had very recently Gay Hendricks on the podcast as well. You probably know him from
Yes.
The Big League.
Mm-hmm.
He's also such an inspiration to me. And his work is also evolving exactly around this. Like, why do people want to create change and then they don't? So he calls this the upper limit problem. And I just love that we are all like investigating this subject. And that's also what I work with my clients on. And we do it in so many different ways. That's what I'm working on myself on all the time, you know? And it's just so fascinating. So your book really also calls me to the first one that you mentioned. So that is so wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And how was your experience then with the co-authoring of the book with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr.?
That's a great story. So I I received a phone call from a publisher that I had known about. And the publisher said, his name's Randy, and he's like, hey, would you like to republish your book? And I thought, is this a joke? Like, publishers don't call people and ask. And it was real. And so that was my first traditional publisher, was Hierophant Publishing. And Randy does workshops. And so I did a workshop. We invited the Ruiz family. So we invited Miguel Sr. and Miguel Jr. And I hadn't seen Miguel Jr. for probably 10 years. We kind of grew up together because we both studied under his father for many, many years. And then I had gone off and started doing other things. And so there was this beautiful moment when we came back together and we started talking about what we'd been up to in our lives. And what we realized is that both of us were teaching how not to use the Four Agreements against yourself. Because what we had learned is that this incredible book, like the Four Agreements, is such a foundational spiritual text.
Yeah.
But what many people had started doing is creating what we call the 4 conditions of like, well, I shouldn't have made that assumption. What's wrong with me? Or, oh, you're taking it personally. Just get over it. And instead of using the agreements to become more authentic or like impeccable, people had often started using it to punish themselves, to
Mm.
compare themselves, to judge other people. And so that led us to start to have these conversations, which led to the book. So one day I just said to him, "Hey, do you want to write a book with me? I have this idea." And
Yeah.
and then we got to work together over several years to work on that book.
So this is really beautiful because I have a very similar experience I want to share with you. So I practice most
Yes,
in
I'm
my
shifting.
work. I use a lot of the, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but human design and gene keys. These are modalities
Mm-hmm.
and tools I am fascinated with. I'm very passionate about, and I find them extremely expansive and absolutely life-changing. And it's not for everyone, obviously, right? But what I have discovered over the years is that just like you just mentioned with the four agreements, you can use it in a very empowering way. Like I think the four agreements are meant, but I also have seen that because we humans have this black or white thinking very easily, right? Especially when we're more in our shadows and in the victim state. And everything that I can see as super empowering in human design, another person can see as the major limits to them. For example, like, oh, if I have this in my chart, then I cannot do this. And I started to realize, this is really interesting. And when I was talking about the book that I want to write, I think I'm still in this process of fully owning it, is about this. I was actually thinking about it this morning, and in a way, what you're just sharing is a little bit of like a nudge from me from the universe, because I want to point out how we can fall into this. Because I think once we're aware of it, because I think oftentimes we are not even consciously aware of how we're using it against us and how we're pushing us deeper into the shadows. And I find that any tool, how amazing it is, we can use it in an empowering way, and we can also use it in a very disempowering way. So it always just reflects back at the level of consciousness I think we are at, and how amazing it is we're becoming aware of it. And as we become aware of it, we can start to make the unconscious conscious and shift it, right?
Exactly. And I think of it as conditional versus unconditional. So when we're conditional with ourselves, we say, "I'll love you if, I'll accept you if."
Mhm.
And there's these conditions that we put on ourselves. And we do that with other people as well. And my work foundationally, and I so agree with you, is this the place of helping people to see where they're being conditional, because so often we don't even realize we're being conditional with ourselves and others, to shift to unconditional. And unconditional doesn't mean we don't have boundaries, we don't listen to what our needs are. It's really about not using anything against ourselves. And that is the core of the four agreements. You
Mhm.
know, the first agreement, be impeccable with your word. Miguel used to always say to us, you really just need that agreement. You just need be impeccable with your word. And what impeccable means is to be without sin, which means to not go against yourself.
Mm.
And so that, and easier said than done, right? We have so many years and lifetimes of using things against ourselves without even realizing it, things that have been passed down from our ancestors or from our culture. And so learning how to make that shift. And the way I talk about it is what we're learning to do is shift judgment to discernment
Mhm.
and victim to vulnerability.
Mm.
And that's where the healing happens.
Yeah, I really love that so much. Yeah, it's really fascinating to me how you have been also perceiving this in your work and how we have so many similarities there. So
Yes,
another
yeah.
question I have now for you, because you're also a master firework instructor, which you have to tell me more about, like what this even is. I'm sure it has to do with fire, obviously. And you actually went through an experience about 3 years ago with a wildfire. So I would love for you to share a little bit about how this has impacted you and especially forced you in a way to really slow down in your own life.
Yeah, before I met Miguel, actually, I was studying with someone, her name's Vicky Noble, and she said to our circle one day, "Hey, my friend's doing a firewalk, you should go to it." You all should go. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. This was in 1990. And so I show up at this workshop. It was like a 3 hour drive from where I lived. And it was literally lighting a fire, letting it burn down to coals. And then there was a workshop, and then learning how to walk across hot coals with your bare feet.
Wow.
And I had no idea what I was getting into. And it completely changed my life. I mean, there's so much more I could say about that, but I'll just it. And so, starting in 1991, I took a training then to become a firewalk instructor. And so, I've been teaching people how to work with their fears and move through limitations through firewalking since 1991, and now I train other firewalk instructors to do the same. And so my love of fire is very deep. I've been working with fire for many, many years in a very intimate way. And so 3 years ago, there was the largest fire in New Mexico, largest wildfire in New Mexico. And I steward a 180-acre ranch in the mountains here. And it was a really incredible experience because there was so much devastation. Our community was really impacted. A lot of people lost their homes and their livelihoods through that fire. And what happened for me is I was at a workshop with the Ruizes actually in Sedona when we got the notice to evacuate.
Mm.
And I was I was like, should I go home and evacuate? I ended up calling a friend, was like, can you help me evacuate my house? And she's like, yep, on it. Let me do this. And I felt into it. And I'm one of the most positive people I know. Like I feel like everything's going to work out. I just have to keep my heart open. I'm really optimistic. And I felt into it. And I was like, I'm going to lose the ranch. Like I just knew there's
Mm.
nothing we can do. No amount of prayer, no amount of wishing. It's done. And
Mm.
I was like, that's weird, but I just felt it. And so I ended up going home and helping evacuate. And we were really lucky because at that point we hadn't put up our teaching yurt. And so we were able to go behind the line, basically go the back route and evacuate and move a bunch of stuff out before the fire came. And literally the fire's coming over the hill. And the day of the fire, when the fire came through, I was sitting in my car. I was at the evacuation center and I checked the phone. And anybody who's been through a wildfire, you can check now by satellite where the fire is. And so I looked, and the fire was in my neighbor's yard and it was moving towards our property. And I just burst into tears. And I was like, this is it, it's happening. And there was this moment of, what do I do? What do I do? And so many of us that have gone through a big tragedy or change, whether that's a big divorce or a wildfire or some other big shift in our life, there's this moment where we know we have a big choice and there's a gap. And we can either go back to what we've always done, or we can make a new choice. We can do a leap, right? And
Mhm.
that was the leap moment for me because I got really quiet and I asked myself, what can I do? What's needed here? And the message I got was, sing to the trees, be with the trees and just stay with them. And so for the next hour, I sat in my truck and cried and sang and just said, I'm sorry to my forest and to the trees and to the animals, and knew that the fire was going through the land, but was able to stay present with my grief and with what was happening. And, people later said to me, well, aren't you mad at fire?
Mm.
Aren't you mad that the fire took everything? And I was like, no, the fire did what fire does. It did it really well. And it was devastating. But when we honor an element, when we honor life, we have to honor and make a big space for the birthing process and the dying process. And that is all part of it. And so there's a lot of grief over the years. It's been very tender. And we're now doing some really remarkable restoration process up there. I've learned a lot through being in relationship with fire, and it continues to teach me.
Wow, so many wisdom insights that you were sharing here. I mean, first of all, I really love how you shared that you just knew and you went into fully surrendering to it and accepting it, right? Rather than trying to fight it. Because, yeah, sometimes there is a greater plan that doesn't really make sense to us, and it's just for us to really learn to accept and be with that. And also how calm you really stayed throughout the process and leaned into grieving, because that probably brings up a lot of emotions. I mean, we recently saw the fires in California as well, right? And I
Mhm.
live in Florida. We have hurricanes here, so I can a little bit relate to it, but it's a different element, right? It's the wind here. So
Yeah.
it's definitely like a shocking experience. And so in just to share with you from the gene keys or the human design, when we have a shocking experience, it usually the higher expression of this is awakening. So something beautiful actually comes out of it. So what is that for you? What kind of awakening did this bring about for you?
Couple different levels. One was that place of recognizing that I was calm. It was difficult for sure, but there was a level of surrender that I had that was new.
Hmm.
Because in the past, I would have in some way fought it, or like, if we just pray, or if I just get everybody together. And and that realization that there was a level of understanding that it's not, if you do it right, nothing bad will ever happen. And I think sometimes we fall into that trap of like, if I pray the right way, or if I do the right thing, or if I just manifest correctly, there will be no bad. I don't believe that.
Hmm.
And we're in a really changed time. Climate change is very real. And so that was the other awakening, is that I'm on the kind of front lines of climate change, because that's what we were navigating. And that to learn how to be in relationship to the land in a different way, and not then go right into, okay, what do we need to do to fix this? I spent a year just walking through ashes and looking at dead trees and talking to the land of like, what's needed now,
Hmm.
because I didn't know, should we walk away? Maybe that's the message. Maybe the land just needs time to heal. It doesn't want humans involved. And over the year, and I brought, a lot of my apprentices came and we listened, and what we got from the land is, no, let's work. We're here to work with you. Let's keep going. And so it then opened and awakened in me this whole circle in my life, because I used to be work deeply with farming and with agriculture and with restorative practices, with agricultural practices of working with the soil. And so I was like, oh, right, I know I have this in my
Hmm.
wisdom already. And so there's been this really interesting coming back into relationship with the land. I had a 5-year plan with that property of a wilderness retreat where people could come in hermitage and do art. And now I have a 50-year vision that's way beyond me, to
Wow.
feed the butterflies and the bees and the bears. Like, the humans are still part of the equation, but my heart is now, how do I create restoration on this land so that it'll support the animals when I'm gone?
Hmm.
And that it's been really fun to be part of this larger restoration. And it's going to look different. There probably won't be forests there anymore because the climate's changed. And so instead of fighting of like there should be forests, that awakening of work with what you have, what is actually needed here, what will be sustainable. And there's going to be a lot of experimentation, which
Hmm.
feels kind of exciting to see what grows,
Yeah.
what will nourish the soil.
Yeah, it's so fascinating that this like destruction that first happened then brought about these gifts that you actually already had, the wisdom about how to work with the soil. And I really believe that is something so important for the future, to work with the soil and to regenerate, because you know this probably better than most other people that the soil is completely depleted from the agriculture, especially in the United States. It's quite a disaster with the GMO crops and everything. And I see more and more people talk about it, and it brings me so much joy. A friend of mine actually is a beekeeper now, and it's just wonderful because we have all the things, right? It's just sometimes we need that shocking moment to kind of like bring us back to our core, and live nature is showing us like where is our attention really needed and where do we have to focus on it. And like you say, right, rather than resisting what is, that more and more forests are gone, like how can we actually use what we have and make the best out of it. And we never know how things are gonna rebuild from that energy, right? Because maybe the forests are gonna grow back eventually. That's kind of beyond.
What we know exactly. And we have aspens coming up, and this is so mind-blowing that those aspen trees, which often come after a fire, but the roots have been under the ground for 50, 100 years.
Oh, really?
And
Then they
once the
started
pine
to.
trees were gone, yeah, the aspens came back up. Isn't
Oh,
that fascinating? I
wow.
mean,
I mean that is super fascinating. It's like, I mean,
yeah,
nature just keeps blowing your mind again and again. It's so wise, and it's almost like, yeah, we needed this fire because we had to let go of this so that the aspens can come up. Oh, wow.
yes,
That's totally
yeah,
to me. Mm.
it's really neat. And so the next step with the restoration is we're going to do big circles. So we're going to, because we have to protect the aspen trees and for whatever's growing from the deer. So we're going to make these large 30-foot circles out of, it's called cattle panel, that'll protect what's inside. And then we're going to plant wild plums and some, we'll plant different trees like Douglas fir and the ponderosa pine that were there before, and then create watering systems so that the rainwater will go into barrels and then we can water. And I want to make it so people can go in and do prayers, and we'll do wildflowers and then see, hopefully that island will then go out and restore the rest of the land. So that's the next phase. It's huge. I mean, it's a big project, but we have a big community, and that's something else that I'm really grateful for, is to bring people onto the land, to get their hands dirty, to learn how to work with the soil, to learn about mycelium and how important what's under what we can't see, how
Mhm.
important those underground connections are. So there's a lot of gifts that are happening. And we bought a sawmill. Who knew that I would own a tractor and a sawmill, but
Oh,
that's the girl
wow.
I am now. Yeah.
Nice.
And so we've been milling the trees, the dead trees, and we're building buildings. We're building little A-frame retreat houses out of them right now. So that's
Oh
part of
my gosh, I
the
love all of this. You know, because
yeah.
for the last few years, so I live in South Florida. I don't know if you've been here, but it's a beautiful place. I really love it, especially the sunshine, but it's also a little bit disconnected in many parts from nature. And so, I mean, I have the Everglades actually very close to here, but I have been craving more connection with nature. I spent actually a lot of time in Seattle over the last year and a half because my there.
Yes.
And that was very delightful for me because of the mountains and just more exposure to nature in general. And when you're just talking with us, I'm like, oh my gosh, because as an online entrepreneur, I spend a lot of time on the computer and sometimes inside, and I have been noticing my body is tolerating it less and less. And it's actually
Yes.
energizing
Yeah.
every time I get out. And when you're talking, like, I'm like, I want to help you dig the dirt and make my hands wet and stuff like that. So because I actually was going to ask you, so do you have a place where people can come, like a retreat center? You already answered the question. You're building that right now, I think. And also, how can people, I do know that you have a nonprofit. It's called the Center for Creative Intent. Is that related to the work you're doing there, or is it something else?
It is. It's related to the work that we're doing there. And so we do work parties twice a year right now where people can come and help with the restoration
Mhm.
in May, June, and then September. And then we're just starting to do retreats out there now. So I'm doing apprenticeship programs out there. We're starting to rent the space out. So we have the community kitchen that we built out of adobe bricks. So that survived the fire. We had one thing that survived the fire, which was that community kitchen. And we've since then built a bathhouse with 2 composting toilets. We're off grid. So that's the other thing. It's really wild. We're up against 1.8 million acres of national forest is our backyard.
Wow, really?
Yeah, yeah, it's quite amazing how much space there is in New Mexico. And then we have a 30-foot teaching yard. So we'll be doing more and more things. I think by next year we'll be fully functional, which will be really sweet.
Well, I'm just gonna put
Yeah.
it out there when I come visit in whatever way or form.
Yeah, please come
Like
visit, come hang
hosting,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
doing retreats and
Hmm.
people just being connected with like-minded people. That's just something has been on my vision, on my heart very much because especially, after COVID, everything was like more inside, and now it's like, okay, let's
Yes.
back together and connect with people. It's such beautiful work you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing this story, because it's also,
Mm,
again, this reminder, like sometimes things don't go as planned. And like you say, it's not like everything always goes the way we want it to, or everything is always going to be good. We are given challenges over and over again to, I think, connect deeper and deeper with our unique purpose, the unique gifts and talents we have, and also to role models for
yeah.
other people that, we are given the challenge we're here to embrace, and we can totally grow and expand from that. So it's, yeah, very, very inspiring. Thank you for modeling that. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Now, I would love to hear, going back to how we started, what makes all the difference for people when it comes to wanting to change? Like, what is the person that stays stuck in old habits? Because sometimes we make progress and then we make two steps back, right? But then there are other people,
Exactly.
they do make change and they maintain it, and it keeps rolling and rolling. So what's that secret sauce?
So it's a great question. And it's really about, I think, three things. One is our capacity to tell ourselves the truth. And
Hmm.
when I say to tell ourselves the truth, it's not the truth of what we wish was happening or what we think other people want our truth to be, but that place of self-intimacy where we really slow down to get to know, who is this being now? Who am I? And what do I yearn for? What am I craving? What do I want more of in my life? What's not working for me? And so that loving truth telling to ourselves is one of the places that when we start to tell ourselves the truth more, we can then navigate changes and challenges in a really beautiful way because we're listening to this being. And the second is that shift between judgment to discernment. So in our lives, there's always going to be obstacles. Obstacles are always going to arise. And when we hit an obstacle, we either go into a spin where we go back into an old pattern,
Hmm.
or we use the obstacle to help us raise energy, to match the energy of the obstacle. This is what we teach in firewalking, is that obstacles can cause us to go back into old patterns, or they can be like, hello, okay, thank you, let me raise my energy to meet to meet the energy of this challenge. And there's lots of different tools of how we raise the energy. And one of the ways we as humans tend to lose energy is through judgment and comparison.
Oh, yeah.
So what often happens, right? Somebody wants to make a change, an obstacle arises, and instead of saying, oh, like, okay, an obstacle, great, let me be creative, let me get resources, let me get support to figure out how to get through this obstacle, and recognizing often the obstacles are mirroring to us inner obstacles that we have, agreements, limitations, or beliefs. And what I've seen is that when people have the capacity to just get curious and wonder and also be in touch with their own emotional state, then we can listen to get the support we need, or to undo the old agreements, or to do what's the next little baby step to get through the obstacle. So there's that moment of either I'm going to use this obstacle against myself and make myself wrong and bad, or blame somebody else, or feel like I'm not enough, or I'm going to use this obstacle to get creative. And that when we go through the obstacle, then we have more capacity, we have more energy, we have more spaciousness. So that movement from judgment to discernment and to creativity and to wonder is everything. And it takes a lot of support to undo the ways that we've limited ourselves. And I know that this is the work that you do as well, Annalena, is helping people with
Yeah.
those obstacles.
It's so beautiful, because this is often why I say, we have all different ways how we do such similar work. And because I never looked for human design growing up, I didn't even know what it was, but it found me and it was like, oh my God, it lit me up so much. It brought me so much joy. It came easy to me. And all these words you have been using. So I kind of want to reflect it back a little bit because there's so much wisdom here. So the truth, for example, I have always been saying, also in my personal life, only the truth sets us free, seriously, you know? And like you say, the truth is not about, yeah, what you want to be true or something. And my truth may be different, very different than your truth, right? That's very unique to us. But especially when it comes to emotions, how we feel. Like the truth is right now, maybe that I have a very reactive pattern or I feel like a victim, right? That's how we start. And it's all about, I think, self-acceptance and fully surrendering to what is, just like you had the story with a fire, where you just fully leaned into accepting how things were, where we love and accept who we are. We can be compassionate, we inquire. And also, there are certain human design gates that talk about curiosity, that talk about wonder. Also, when I was talking to Gay Hendricks, he talks all about wonder, how he learned this from Einstein. I mean, it's so beautiful how, yeah, we bring this through our unique voice, through our unique essence, right, to people. And that helps us to shift out of these patterns of, like you say, judgment and staying stuck in those obstacles and actually pushing us back with that. Even discernment is a word that's also in one of the gene keys, right? Where we have this moment of choice. We can see it as a bad thing, or we can see it as actually a good thing that helps us grow. And it also brings me back to the power of the present moment, right? Because in every single moment, I have the choice. So, for example, my old self, if I receive a bill that would trigger me that I don't like, and I'm like I shared an example with you yesterday. I
Mhm.
I almost got a ticket, but it was like a situation that was super unfair, and you feel like you were being set up. And I wanted to get into my old self, like, oh, no, I have to pay all this money, and this is really bad. And I was literally sitting in the car, and I was like, okay, I have the choice right now to be that old self or to actually be grateful that I have the money to pay this. And you know what? Things happen. Maybe I'm learning something here. And then the officer came and he gave me the thing and he's like, "Oh, it's just a warning." And I was like, "Oh, really?" You know? So already in this moment, I feel like I was being tested by life to make that discernment in the moment, and it felt actually very empowering to make this different choice, and my old self was still trying to fight its way through and feel more like a victim, and this is not fair. But I think, yeah, in every single moment we have that, yeah, we have that choice to discern. Yeah. And like you say, raise our energy, raise our consciousness, right?
Yes. And what I always remind people too is that the beginning part of this process is sometimes the most challenging. Because what often happens is we have awareness before we have the energy to make change.
Oh, that's a good one.
And so what happens in this awareness part of the process is we're aware of the patterns, but we're still watching ourselves do them. This is part of what I did in my first book, Four Elements of Change, which is now called The Little Book of Big Freedom. It's had many names, but it's now called The Little Book of Big Freedom. That we have to learn how to be aware of the patterns and then understand. Awareness is huge. To just celebrate, like, I'm aware of doing something.
Yeah.
Even if you're watching yourself doing it, you're now aware. And so
Mm.
instead of judging ourselves for the awareness, we want to celebrate and know, okay, now I need to build up the energy so that I can not go down this old pathway. And in a way, when we're making change in the beginning, it's like you're on a little boat and there's this well-worn path of like that's like the Grand Canyon, and you're trying to make a new choice. It's this little itty bitty trickle. And of course, you're going to go down the Grand Canyon for a while because that's the familiar route. But at some point, if you keep your awareness without judging, because the judgment is where we lose all the energy.
Yeah.
If we can put a period in the sentence and just like, don't like, oops, stop, that and watch the pattern, eventually you gather the energy that you make a new choice and then you carve the new pattern and that then becomes effortless. That takes time and it takes patience and perseverance and compassion with ourselves, that some of these patterns we've been doing are decades old, or even are from our ancestors, or from our lineages, and that we're the first ones that are breaking these old patterns. And so this is why I love community so much, is to have community, to have support, to have people around us that are cheering us on and that are saying, who are you? Like, let's discover who we are together. Let's expand together. And that is really one of the key pieces, I believe, to creating big change, is having the right people around you that are supportive in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, when you were just talking, I can tell you from my own life, this is all so true because yes, we have to be aware first, because if you're not aware, how can we even change anything? But this distinction that you make, that it takes time for the energy to also build up. And can I share an example with you that I'm processing right now in my own life where I'm working on changing?
Yes.
It's a very, I think it's something many people can relate to. So it's about, waking up in the morning and not hitting the snooze buttons. Because I started to notice that I was judging myself and nothing worked. Oh my gosh, I was so in resistance and all of it. And several weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just allowing myself. I'm just letting it be. And when I'm ready, I'm gonna shift it. So what you were just saying was exactly what I had to hear, because I've started to notice that I'm needing it less and less. And it's becoming, I'm still in the midst of changing it in some way. But I really at some point had this realization, like I need to stop beating myself up for it and just let it be while I'm setting the intention. I'm willing, I'm committed to change it. And so I'm already starting to feel how I think eventually it's probably just naturally melt away. That's how I feel about it? Because we're often, like you say, yeah, we're so judging, we're so hard trying to change these patterns. Like we have a diet, right, and exercise routines. Like we do something really hardcore and then we fall back like light years and we're so frustrated with ourselves. So it's really what you're saying, I think, is it's meant to be a gentle process. It's meant to be real, like how it evolves for us as humans, right? Where we are compassionate with ourselves and we're just letting it evolve at a slow pace rather than rushing. And because I think that's also what nature always models to us, right? Good things take time, and yeah, but what's meant to be will evolve as long as we are having the intention behind it.
Absolutely. And that was really the impetus for me of writing Warrior Goddess Training, because what most of us are familiar with is what I call excess warrior, which is I will force and push and override myself.
Mm,
And that works in the short run, but it doesn't work in the long run, because we resist, then we punish ourselves, then we get exhausted and burn out, then we get resentment. And so to come back into balanced warrior is you're clear about your commitment. I love how you shout, like, you're clear what your commitment is, but you realize the old way wasn't working. Your
mm,
commitment's really strong. And then the goddess energy is like the receptivity of listening to, what does this being need to change? There's more patience, there's the receptivity, the intuition. And you're so right that through that, holding a container for yourself for the change to happen, it'll happen naturally, or the intuition will be like, do change this.
hmm
Okay. And then it'll all undo. But it takes that patience and undoing the old patterns of warrior, of push force, and bringing more in the goddess and that balanced warrior that I think we're, as a society right now, really in transition.
mm. Ah, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all this wisdom. I think my audience gonna absolutely love it. So Heather Ash, let me know, how can people find you? I know you also have a podcast, Instagram, Facebook. And are there any other resources? And I think you host a lot of events every year, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's many, many ways. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, HeatherAsh Amara. The website is warriorgoddess.com, and that's where we can find all the live events. I teach in Sedona twice a year. I travel to Peru and Scotland and Mexico, and do a lot of online work as well. And I also have the podcast Warrior Goddess Revolution and a Substack, which is called Out of the Fire.
Mm.
So that's where the most alive writing that I do right now is in that Substack. And it's heatherash.substack.com, where I talk about my experience of going through the wildfire. And like right now, I'm writing about my puppy and what I'm learning from her
Oh,
and
it's
the
beautiful.
challenges of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's a fun place to connect with me
Yeah,
too.
that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And one final question that I have for you, and then I let you go. What does it mean to you to live your genius?
To be present, committed, open hearted, and available to the universe.
Hmm, that's quite beautiful. I love this. Thank you so much again for your time, for sharing your wonderful story and how you have been navigating through some very challenging times in your own life and really role modeling to us, how we can grow and evolve and create so much even more beautiful things from that you're now sharing with others. So thank you so much. It was such a joy to have the conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Annalena, and all.
Yeah, and you listeners, thank you so much for tuning in as always. And I'm very excited to be back with you on the next episode.